Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new here. My name is Sarah Jane. I am a PR practitioner living in DC. I make a lot of content on wedding planning, books, personal finances, grad school at Georgetown. So if that sort of content interests you, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe because it really helps support my channel. So today is a August book wrap up. August flew by and I can't believe we're in September, so I am just going to share what I read this month. I read a total of 7 books this month, which is actually the same amount that I read last month. I'm still pretty new to like BookTube and talking about books, so I know there's a lot of booktubers on here that read a lot more than that, but 7 is honestly a pretty good number for me, so I'm really proud of myself. I also recently launched my book blog, which is, as I'm reading these books, I like write my blog on them, and they're pretty in-depth, I think. So if you're wanting to know more about the books that I'm going to talk about in this video, be sure to head over to my website, which is called www.thesjedit.com. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get into it. The first book I read this month was A Court of Mist and Fury, and then I read A Court of Wings and Ruins a couple books later just to kind of give it time to breathe, but I'm just going to talk about them together. So first, let's talk about A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. So this is the second book in the Aquawar series. I rated this 4 stars. The first ACOTAR book was okay. I feel like you have to get 2/3 of the way into the book and then it gets really good. But this book was good the entire time and definitely way better than the first. It ties in so much more stuff together that it almost makes me want to go back to the first book and reread stuff that I didn't pick up on. So the back says that Feyre has undergone more trials than one human girl can carry in her heart. Though she's now been granted the powers and lifespan of a high fae, she is haunted by her time under the mountain and the terrible deeds she performed to save the lives of Tamlin and his people. As her marriage to Tamlin approaches, Feyre's hollowness and nightmares consume her. She finds herself split into 2 different people, one who upholds her bargain with Rysand, High Lord of the feared Night Court, and one who lives out her life in the Spring Court with Tamlin. While Feyre navigates a dark web of politics, passion, and dazzling power, a greater evil looms. She might just be the key to stopping it, but only if she can harness her harrowing gifts, heal her fractured soul, and decide how she wishes to shape her future and the future of the world in turmoil. This is so well written. I literally loved this book. There are so many emotions of like heartbreak, love, friendship, betrayal, and sacrifice. You spend about 1/3 of the book in Spring Court and the rest of it in Night Court, and there's so much world building when you're in Night Court. It's honestly so fascinating. I love the Night Court, which I had not been expecting because in my normal life I love sunshine and I love light and air, but the way she describes Night Court is just so mystical, beautiful, and enchanting. This romance in this book is definitely a slow burn, which is more my style, so it's not insta-lovey, if that's something that like you're worried about. And it felt really real and organic, and I was definitely team Rysand by the end of this book. I also think the reason why I really liked ACOMAF better than ACOTAR is because ACOTAR is very like damsel in distress vibes, whereas she really develops into a strong character in this novel, and as a strong independent woman, it's something that I appreciate. Tropes in this are forced proximity and enemies to lovers. So that was the second book, and then the third book, which I also read this month, is A Court of Wings and Ruin. So the back of this says Feyre has returned to the Spring Court determined to gather information on Tamlin's actions and learn what she can about the invading king threatening to bring her land to its knees. But to do so, she must play a deadly game of deceit. One slip could bring doom not only for Feyre, but for everything and everyone she holds dear. As war bears down upon them, Feyre endeavors to take her place as one of the high fae of the land, balancing her struggle to master her powers, both magical and political, and her love for her court and family. Amidst these struggles, Feyre and Rysand must decide whom to trust among the cunning and lethal High Lords and hunt for allies in unexpected places. In this thrilling third book in the Court of Thrones and Roses series, the fate of Feyre's world is at stake as armies grapple for power over the one thing that could destroy it. So I rated this book 4.5 stars, and honestly, I had so many thoughts reading this novel. So First of all, I didn't think that a book would beat Aquamath because I loved Aquamath so much, but Aqua War is just phenomenal. So while Aquamath is a lot of world building, Aqua War is literally about war. So I don't know if she intended to like put a pun on words on that, but she did. It is the thickest book yet at 700 pages, so it is a commitment to read, which is why I gave it a couple books after Aquamath before picking up this one, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is just a lot. I think Sarah J. Maas did a really good job making you wonder, like, who are your allies, who is not on your side, and like hoping and like holding your breath to hope that you're wrong. It's definitely the most action-packed of the 3 books. I would say that ACOTAR sets the stage for the series. Aquamath sets the plot, and Aqua War is like the action-packed war book of the series. There is a ton of character development in this book, which I think is also another one of my favorite things about this book. And I don't think this will give any spoiler alerts if I go into them, but I think Tamlin is so freaking annoying. Like, just get over Pharaoh already, you know. With that being said, I understand why they delved into that once you get later into the book, which if you know, you know, but definitely he was so annoying. Nesta was probably my favorite character that developed within this book. I really disliked her in ACOTAR and Aquamath. I just thought that she was so rude, unemotional, ungrateful, but then you really see another side of her in Aqua War, and she really grew on me. I would say that my heart broke for Elaine. Everything that she went through in this book is just gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching, and so painful to read. And then last but certainly not least is the dad. The dad of the sisters in this book is just, like, it made me swoon because I hated the dad in the first book, and I legitimately teared up near the end of the book when he came back in, and it really just feel like he redeemed himself. So if you know, you know. But yeah, those are the 4 characters that I just really kind of like swooned over with their character development in this book. I think one of my favorite things about this book was the mental discussions between the bond. This was introduced in Aquamath, but it really is developed within Aqua War, and I thought that was like really fun and really unique, and it made you feel like the intimacy between the characters were a lot stronger than just typical dialogue. So I've said a lot of like really positive things about this book. I did have a couple of pet peeves, which I do want to go on. It really revolves around the syntax of Maas when she was writing this. So first of all, everyone just snorts. Like, who snorts this often? You know, maybe if it was just one character that was snorting, it wouldn't bother me, but like everyone is snorting and it's just really weird. The second thing that bothered me was all the snarls. Like, there's just a lot of snarling going on. Specifically on page 424, there are multiple times that everyone is snarling. Like, there are so many other words in the English dictionary that we can describe that emotion and that action, and I just don't understand why we're sticking to just one word. And the last word is the vulgar gesture. Like, once again, there was a chapter that the vulgar gesture was stated 3 times. We can definitely change up the language, you know, flick them off, shot on the bird. There are just so many other ways that we can talk about giving a vulgar gesture that we just stick to the one thing, and I just hated that. I don't know if this was said a lot during ACOTAR and Aquamath, but it really shined during Aqua War. And then the last thing I did not like about this book is that the smut was amazing in Aquamath. Like, slow burn, oh, just great. The smut in this book, really off. Like, it just really didn't hit the spot, pun intended. For example, they're having a raging battle, the characters are covered in mud, sweat, and blood, and then they decide that they're gonna go do the deed. Like, that's just really weird. And then Feyre's exhausted from trying to fly, and she literally can't move, and that's the time that they're gonna pivot toward an intimate scene, and it's just strange. And I don't know if this is because as a high fae, she is just aroused all the time and can push through, you know, physical ailments. Maybe that's like a thing and she doesn't get tired like humans, which is possible. But for the reader, I just found it really off-putting. But overall, this is my favorite of the 3 books so far. And I'm really excited to read the next book. Trigger warnings for this book would be War, PTSD, Prisoner of War, and Killed in Action. All right. Moving away from the ACOTAR series, I did read some other books this month. First, starting off with Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welsh. I did not realize that when I picked up this book, this was a YA novel, which is not my favorite, and I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. So the back says, Lena is spending the summer in Tuscany, but she isn't in the mood for Italy's famous sunshine and fairy tale landscape. She's only there because it was her mother's dying wish that she get to know her father, but what kind of father isn't around for 16 years? All Lena wants to do is go back home. But then she's given a journal that her mom had kept when she lived in Italy. Suddenly, Lena's uncovering a magical world of secret romances, art, and hidden bakeries. A world that inspires her, along with the ever-so-charming Wren, to follow in her mother's footsteps and unearth a secret that has been kept for far too long. It's a secret that will change everything Lena knew about her mother, her father, and even herself. People come to Italy for love and gelato, someone tells her, but sometimes they discover much more. Overall, this book is like super adorable, especially as someone who's been to Italy and like loves Rome. I really appreciated that aspect of this novel. It's not the most descriptive in language, so I didn't necessarily feel like I was in Italy because she describes some of the things, but she doesn't really go into the details of the settings that the characters are in or Italian culture, so it doesn't paint the most vivid of images. I think this is a really good like lighthearted summer read and a palate cleanser, so if you're trying to get in one more summer read, I definitely think that this is a cute one that you could add to your TBR, and a really good book if you're looking for a break from some heavier novels like I was with the ACOTAR series. I will say that I could see how this book was going to end about 2/3 of the way through the book, and that this is the first book of a trilogy. There's also Love and Luck and Love and Olives, but I don't think I'm going to be reading them, but that's this book. Next up is Twisted Love by Anna Huang. I'm not going to read the back, it's a little lengthy, but essentially it's about two characters, Alex Volkov and Ava Chen, and Ava's brother is best friends with Alex, and Ava's brother leaves, and he asks his best friend to watch over his sister because he's very protective of her, and they sort of have like an enemies relationship. So the trope is definitely like enemies to lovers and like forced proximity. There have been so many people that love this series because there's 4 books in the series. Each book follows a different character within the friend group and their love relationship. I have a very unpopular opinion, and I did not really like this book. So I was so excited to pick it up because it's all over BookTube and BookTok, and it just came across as very insta-lovey. Like, I want to say that they maybe hated each other for 2 chapters, and then they were like this fierce intimacy, like passion between them, and it just felt really off. Alex gave me Christian Grey vibes, which some people might like that. I just feel like that's a very unoriginal character at this point, since 50 Shades of Grey has been out for so long, and I just didn't really enjoy that. I did like that it was set in DC. I thought that was kind of fun. I also really liked that Ava is Asian, so I thought that was really nice that she like wove that sort of culture within the book as well. But yeah, I am going to pick up the second book because I am hoping that it'll be better. The second book is supposed to be about the princess in the friend group and like her love with her bodyguard, which is like forbidden because she's a princess. So I'm hoping maybe I'll like that better. But yeah, only 3 stars, and trigger warnings is domestic abuse. I will say the plot twist at the end did get me. I was like, what? Did not see that coming. I will say that. Alrighty, next up is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. I picked this up at a local bookstore in town in Old Town, Virginia, and it just looked really cute, and I was really excited about it. The synopsis is kind of long as well, but essentially it's about a girl named Vera. She comes home because that is her mother's dying wish, who is very ill and asks her to come home. Her dad built this house that they lived in and grew up in, and she ends up having to face a lot of trauma returning back to her home. I will say overall this book is very creepy. It has like haunted house vibes. It's perfect for the fall Halloween time frame if you're like building your TBR for that time of year. If you like The Haunting on Netflix, this is like those vibes. So if you're into that, this would be a good book for you. It took me about halfway through the book to finally get into it. But then once I was flipping through like crazy. The first half was filled with like what I thought, or what I think is very minor details that I really didn't need to have, but whatever. Which is why I didn't give this 4 stars. I ended up giving this 3.75 stars. But once the storyline picked up, I was really into it, and I think it's a really good for that time of year. Okay, so next up is the Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I've seen this all over BookTube, Book Talk. So many people have talked about it, and I wanted to give it a go. I'm not really much of like a romance reader, but I figured I was trying to go outside of what I typically read. Like, I'm a super big thriller girly, especially like suburban thrillers. Those are my jam. But I wanted to try to incorporate romance this month and just get outside of my comfort zone. So I figured a rom-com was a really good way for me to break into that genre. This essentially follows the story of Olive and Ethan. Olive's sister and Ethan's brother get married to one another. They are the best man and like maid of honor. Everyone at the wedding ends up getting sick from food poisoning except these 2 characters, and they have a non-refundable honeymoon. So the bride and groom, you know, have them take the honeymoon instead, and they hate each other, they can't stand each other. So it's definitely like forced proximity, enemies to lovers type of trope again. And it's really funny. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. I thought the way Christina Lauren, which is 2 people, I'm actually pretty sure, yeah, it's 2 friends and it's their pen name, how they incorporated humor into this book and awkward situations and things like that. I thought it was very well done. So I really did enjoy this, which I'm really surprised about. The plot develops over time with some unexpected twists. I will say that if you like slow burn, this book isn't necessarily it. It's not really like a fast burn either. It's like somewhere in the middle. But it didn't feel rushed. Like, it felt like a good tempo. Trigger warning for this would be cheating. I would say if you're looking for another last good summer read, because this is like such a summer vibe, because most of it takes place in Hawaii, I would say to definitely add this to your TBR before we head into fall. I just realized I haven't been telling you guys any of my favorite quotes from these books. Well, actually, I don't think any of these books had a favorite quote except for this last one. So, okay, the last book I read this month is The Cave Dwellers by Christina McDonald. This is an interesting book. So I first just want to preface this by explaining what cave dwellers are. Cave dwellers is a term indigenous to Washington, D.C. It defines a member of those families who have resided there for generations and whose bloodlines are woven into the warp and weft of the nation's capital. So it is like 1%, the very affluent 1% of Washington, D.C. who have lived here. Those are cave dwellers. So this book essentially follows 4 different families, which, by the way, this is only 300 pages long, so 4 families and 300 pages is kind of a lot. I will say that I am super grateful that there is a family tree at the beginning of this book who tells you, like, okay, what family is who. So there is a political family, a cave dweller family, a military family, and a media family. So all the basic stereotypes of Washington, D.C. But it doesn't just follow the parents. A lot of the story is developed through their children as well. So there's definitely like a lot going on. And I definitely got confused with it, which is why I did not give this a higher rating. I was super interested to read this book just as someone who lived in D.C. It's not a book that really follows a traditional plotline, I guess. Like, there isn't really a happy ending. I'm sorry, that might be a spoiler alert, but it more so explores the topic of classism and racism in the US, but it's done through the children's perspective and how kids in this generation are trying to cope and understand. I will say that this book didn't make me, like, this book made me not want kids just because of how Bunny treats and talks to her parents. Like, that is my worst nightmare as someone who grew up in a very, like, respectful household of your parents. I was like, ooh, I do not want kids who like would talk to me that way. The character and plot development is very interesting in this book. Each family has its own motivations and issues that they are dealing with. I will say that I think Kate had the most character development by the end of the novel. She comes in as a very naive sort of character, PR practitioner, and then she does gain like power and confidence and status, but she loses something by the end of it. Like, I would honestly say probably her innocence is what she loses by the end of this book. I don't think this book is going to be everyone's cup of tea, especially if you like romance. This book is not it. However, if you're really interested in exploring the world of the wealth in DC and reading more about social and racial justice, you might be interested in this book. Overall, I gave it 3 stars just because of how lost I kept getting with the characters. I feel like if you're focusing on 4 families, it probably needs to be a longer novel so you can get more invested in the characters and understanding who they are and not having to resort back to a family tree. Like I said, this book does not have a satisfying ending, which I think was an intentional decision because this book was written back in 2020 when like the US was dealing with a lot of conflict, and so I think that was an intentional decision, but as a reader I just kind of wished that the book hadn't just ended and there had been a little bit more of a wrap up to it. I think it's also kind of worth noting who the author is. So Christina McDowell wrote this book. She had an interesting past. So she grew up here in DC. So back in 2004, when she was at college in Los Angeles, her father, an associate at Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street, was arrested for security fraud, convicted, and sentenced to 5 years of federal prison. He stole her social security number and left her nearly $100,000 in debt. So she wrote a lot about this in her memoir called After Perfect, but I think a lot of her inspiration for this novel came from her own personal experiences living here and then what she personally went through. So I think that's important to note when going into this novel, which I didn't realize until after I pretty much finished the book. I do want to share some favorite quotes though, which I think some people, I think you have to live here to understand them, but I still want to share them in this video in case you are someone who like lives in DC or in the surrounding DMV. So one of them was, there's a group of men sitting in a room and they're talking about where they're from. The men are, this is what it says, the men are hard to differentiate from each other. Rich white men who are undoubtedly power players, but you'd have to know what kind of car each one drives or the neighborhood in which he lives to truly know who he is. Calorama, McLean, Chevy Chase, Georgetown. You probably wouldn't find any of them in Silver Spring, Bethesda, Arlington, or Old Town. Those neighborhoods are for the average man at the Pentagon or worse, the Chamber of Commerce. So I thought that was really funny as someone who really enjoys Old Town, which is where I bought one of those other books. Another quote that I enjoyed was, I'm also Southern. I grew up in the South, I should say, and we wore a lot of pearls. And so there's a quote in this book that says, around her neck with diamond studs because pearl earrings are for teenagers. I thought that was hilarious because a lot of girls in the South still wear pearls. It's like a thing you do there. This was another quote that I thought was really powerful. Kate says to Doug, you know, Doug, people who lie to others don't bother me. It's people who lie to themselves that end up getting completely fucked. Thought that was super insightful. So anyways, overall 3 stars. If you're in DC or interested in DC reading, I thought this was interesting, and yeah. Tropes would be multiple POVs. Trigger warnings would be politics, classism, racism, and suicide. So those are all the books that I read in the month of August, 7 books total. So proud of myself because if you guys watched my August reset, I went out trying to only read 4 and I read 7. So once again, super proud of myself and love that. I'm gonna be posting my September TBR here in a couple days, so make sure you stay tuned on the books that I'm wanting to read in the month of September. But in the meantime, let me know in the comment section below what books you guys read this month. I'd be super interested. I'm always looking for ways to grow my TBR, especially now that fall is coming. I'm getting all the spooky books. I want to read so many spooky books, so if you have a recommendation, please leave in the comments below. Also, if you like thrillers, I'm super into thrillers as well. But that's about it. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe so you see more videos from me. Follow me on Instagram. I post my stories all the time, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.